Well, that was a rough night for a lot of our playoff drivers. Except one. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Darlington Raceway, the track too tough to tame, the Lady in Black, one of the most historic racetracks that we go to on the schedule with the most coveted races in all of our sport, the Southern 500, a crown jewel where it puts the drivers to the test as far as handling their cars, managing their tires, and being there when it matters most. And last night, the opening race of the round of 16 for the playoffs was a tough one for a lot of our playoff drivers. But one driver came out on top at a track where it's too tough to tame. One man tamed it last night. Let's get into all that happened at Darlington. Number one, absolute clinic. Chase Briscoe. My goodness, that was an incredible performance. Briscoe going back-to-back as a winner of the Cookout Southern 500. He won last year's race, and he dominated last night's Cookout Southern 500 to advance himself into the round of 12 by beating out Tyler Reddick, Eric Jones, John Hunter Nemechek, and AJ Allmendinger. Yes, that's an interesting top 5. What a performance by Chase Briscoe in this 19 team. His first year with Joe Gibbs Racing. He started the season out by winning the pole for the Daytona 500. Then he started to get a little bit of a slump. Then he got some momentum going, started having a lot of poles at a lot of venues, got his first win with the team at Pocono in the spring. And last night, he put on a dominant performance to advance himself into the round of 12. Briscoe starting on the front row. He didn't get the pole, unfortunately, at all the crown jewels because this one race, it had to be his teammate, Denny Hamlin, kind of spoiling Briscoe's sweep of the crown jewel events when it comes to being on the pole. But nonetheless, Briscoe started up at the front of the field, and from the quick get-go, he took the lead from his teammate, Denny Hamlin, until a caution happened right behind these guys on the first lap, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But Briscoe took the lead from Denny Hamlin in the initial start, and then after the first caution, we restarted, and Briscoe was on cruise control. Even though we had 2 sets of green flag pit stops in the first stage, nobody had anything for Chase Briscoe. He was just absolutely on rails last night. He won the first stage. He handled the second stage by winning that as well. But during the race, he actually had a problem develop inside his car. He was complaining about the alternator, and he says that the cool suit, he wasn't getting, was stopped functioning. So they told him to turn off the alternator, basically, and that cured the problem, although he had to run the rest of the race without a cool suit. Thankfully, it wasn't too hot and humid like previous Darlington races, so Briscoe was fine to carry on the rest of the night without any cool suit working. But for the rest of the night, the 19 car was absolutely able to run the racetrack and manage his tires all the way around. An absolute superb effort by the 19 team. But after the final caution of the race happened with about 50 laps to go, it brought everybody down pit road. Briscoe's team got him off pit road first, and shout out to the 19 team. They gave him some phenomenal pit stops last night and gave him one hell of a hot ride. And on that last green flag run, it looked like Chase Briscoe was going to be on cruise control. But in the final laps of the race, Tyler Reddick was closing the gap because Briscoe kept flirting with the wall, and it seemed like that Reddick was finding some groove around the racetrack to try to close the gap on Briscoe, and he kept trying and trying and trying, but the 19 car did not withstand the pressure from behind. And despite the last charge by Reddick on the inside through 3 and 4 in the last lap, Briscoe held in his lane and drove off at turn 4 and won his second Southern 500 back-to-back. Of course, he won last year's race. He's won last night's race. And this Darlington track, there's just something about it that has been relatively special and emotional in a way for Chase Briscoe. When the NASCAR Xfinity Series returned from the pandemic that we were trying to work our way through in 2020, the first race back for the Xfinity Series was at Darlington. Chase Briscoe won that race in a dogfight with Kyle Busch for the win. And Briscoe was able to hold him off, and it was an emotional win because during the pandemic, unfortunately, his wife suffered a miscarriage of what was supposed to have been their first child. But thankfully, Briscoe, through the power of God, was able to continue on and win that race and dedicated it to what would have been his firstborn child. And then, of course, last year's win, it was an emotional one for him because he knew that he was going to be going to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025 because of Martin Truex Jr.'s retirement. But he also knew this could be an opportunity for him to try to get one more win for Stewart-Haas Racing, the team he was with originally, because he knew that Stewart-Haas Racing was closing down after this season, or in layman's terms, Tony Stewart was leaving NASCAR at the end of the season, and Gene Haas would still run a Cup car for 2025 with Cole Custer currently piloting it. But Chase Briscoe was able to win that race, and what was a must-win race. It was the last race to make the playoffs last year, and Briscoe got the job done by holding off, once again, Kyle Busch to get the victory. And last night, he led 309 of 367 laps en route to the victory and putting himself into the round of 12. It would not shock me if Chase Briscoe can make it to Phoenix. Remember, that's where he got his first career Cup win in 2022 with Stewart-Haas Racing. Could he go there and maybe win a championship with Joe Gibbs Racing? That would be something for what has been a fairly fun first year for Briscoe with this 19 team. And shout out once again to James Small and the 19 team for giving him one fast hot rod and some phenomenal pit stops on pit road. Without those pit stops, there's probably no way that Briscoe would have been able to hold that track position all night long, considering it was tough for some guys on the racetrack. But a big congratulations to Chase Briscoe and the 19 team. They're on to the round of 12. Number 2, adversity. So many playoff drivers had some problems last night. Over half of our playoff grid dealt with some sort of issue. Now, I've talked about Chase Briscoe's alternator issue, so I don't really need to get too much depth into that. But there were a lot of other guys that had a lot of problems. Starting on lap number 1, turn 2, Josh Berry, driving for the Wood Brothers, starting in 3rd spot. As they're coming off of turn 2, he bobbles on the inside and goes up the track into the side of Tyler Reddick, who was able to hang on to the car and keep going. But Berry, on the other hand, was not as fortunate as he backed into the outside wall and then came down in the middle of the pack, but thankfully nobody hit him. But it put his night and his debut playoff effort behind the 8 ball, as they had to go to the garage and work on the 21 car so they could get him back out there, hoping that somebody else may fall out of the race and may be able to pass him on the racetrack and get a few extra points out of it. But that was not the case. But the one consolation, Berry did get the fastest lap of the race with a damaged car. Ironic, isn't it? But he now finds himself 19 points in a hole after what happened to him in lap 1 of last night's race. But we got a lot more to talk about. How about Denny Hamlin, one of the favorites at Darlington, started on the pole. Seemed to have a pretty good car in the early going, but then in stage number 2, they had a slow pit stop when they were changing the right side tires. And as the jack dropped, the rear tire changer didn't get the rear tire on, so they had to tell him, you got to come back, you got to jack it up again. I didn't get it tied on. So they put the rear tire on, but that cost him a lot of pit stops and dropped him back to 24th. And he was stuck back in that traffic for quite some time. Now, thankfully, they were able to recover and get a 7th place result out of it. But it was a possible missed opportunity. Had they not had that problem, could have been a top 5 finish for them. Thankfully, still 40-plus points above the cutoff line, but that mistake maybe could have hampered his chances to have a chance to go at his teammate for the win late in the race. And then we got Alex Bowman. Oh my gosh, if anybody had a bad night as bad as Josh Berry did, it was Alex Bowman. Didn't qualify well at all and struggled with the car, and they had some misfortune with one of their air guns tightening the wheels on pit road at the end of stage 1 that he fell 3 laps down in the process. Now, thankfully, for a couple of cautions, they were able to get some wave runs and then got back in the lead lap at the end of the 2nd stage. But the car was still not good for Bowman at all last night. He finished 31st, 2 laps down. Absolutely abysmal performance by the 48 team. Then Christopher Bell. You'd expect this guy to be running up front for the win at Darlington, a track that runs like a dirt track and suits his racing style. Well, during pit stops in the 2nd stage, he's leaving his pit box. Carson Hocevar, who just caused the caution for spinning out, he's coming in, Bell's coming out. They make contact, and it hurts the right front fender and the right front splitter of the number 20 car. And when you damage these splitters, these next-gen cars, they are really hard to fix and try to get some sort of aerodynamic sensitivity right that they can still be somewhat competitive. That damage hurt Christopher Bell's race the rest of the night. From there on, he struggled finishing in the top 30, 2 laps down. Another disappointing performance for one of our playoff drivers. And then the rest of the Hendrick cars, in general, Hendrick Motorsports was not good last night at all. The highest finishing Hendrick car was Chase Elliott in 17th spot. And early in the race, it looked like he climbed his way up from where he started in 21st to inside the top 10. Could have run there, but got caught up by a caution during the middle of green flag pit stops when Cody Ware and Ryan Preece hit each other on the backstretch. And Elliott had a slow stop on the right side. They lost their spots. Then they fell a lap down and got it back on the last caution of the race. but could only muster a 17th place result. Kyle Larson and William Byron, I expected these guys, who have always been good at Darlington, to be in the top 5, top 10 for a lot of the race. And Larson was in the top 5, top 10 for a lot of that race until the very end. I don't know what kind of damage they suffered, but he dropped back like an anchor hanging on the back of his car, and he finished in the 19th spot. Absolutely head-scratching performance from Kyle Larson. And William Byron as well, 21st place. Where was it? I mean, they had a slow stop during one of their pit stops under yellow when they were changing right sides, when they had to go back and quickly work on it. It was just a really rough night for Hendrick Motorsports in general. I mean, the whole team should be pretty disappointed in their performance, and they've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to not have that type of performance this upcoming weekend when we head to Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway. They've got to get out of that slump right there. Joey Logano, missing for most of the night, didn't really have quite a good car, finishing in 20th spot. Austin Dillon had a little bit of an incident coming off of turn 4 where he got in the back of another playoff driver, Ryan Blaney. Thankfully, Ryan Blaney didn't hit the wall that hard, but whatever it did, it hurt the underbody of his car, and he kind of ran wounded the rest of the night, finishing in 18th spot. Austin Dillon finishing in 23rd spot. I mean, Shane Van Gisbergen tried a long strategy in stage number 2 to extending the stint, thinking that if he got a caution, he could get lucky and stay on the lead lap, come in for tires and have some decent track position for the rest of the race. But that was not the case, and he ultimately paid the price for it in the final stage when he got caught, and he finished in the 25th spot, a couple laps down. And this is a guy that has won all these road courses with the exception of one early in the season, but these tracks of this first round of the playoffs, you cannot have that bad of performance. Thankfully, he's the only one above the cutoff line by 3 points, the last one in. But if he has another rough performance at a track that he's never been at that we're going to next weekend, followed by Bristol, which is considered his worst racetrack, then the guy that's been dominant on road courses may not have a chance to go for a spot in the round of 8, knowing that the Roval's in the round of 12, and is a prime ticket for SVG to try to get to the round of 8 to have a chance, per se. And Bubba Wallace had a problem also on pit road last night where he was good in the beginning, but he had a problem where they were, I guess they didn't get the tire on tight or had a slow stop, and he lost a couple spots in the process. But thankfully, he had speed in his car, and he was able to recover for a 6th plate result last night. Other than that, I mean, the only guys that didn't really have any problems were Tyler Reddick with his 2nd place result, and Austin Cindric. 12th place is, not too bad at all. It's pretty decent. And Ross Chastain, he was able to get some good stage points last night, and even though he may not have made it at the end of the race on fuel because they didn't get enough fuel in their car in that last stop, he backed it off and was able to muster out an 11th place result, which, by their standards, with all those stage points, I just consider that a really good performance for the one car. But a lot of our playoff drivers had a lot of problems last night, and some of them have got to get that out of their systems for these upcoming races. You can't make mistakes in these playoffs. You want a chance at making it to Phoenix for the championship, you have to be mistake-free. And a lot of those guys last night had a lot of problems. And it wasn't necessarily on the racetrack, despite some incidents for guys like Barry, Bowman, and Blaney. A lot of those incidents happened on pit road. So a tough day for a lot of our playoff guys last night. Number 3, so close. Tyler Reddick was so close to his first win of the season. You cannot say he didn't give it his all last night. After nearly getting taken out on the first lap of the race when Josh Berry got loose on the inside, carried the 45 up the track, the 45 right rear just kind of dinged the side of the wall, but not too hard. He kept it going straight. And from there on, they were able to have a very good car for the rest of the race, running in the top 10 for the most of the first stage. Then they got into the top 5 in the second stage. At times on restarts, they tried to get the lead from Chase Briscoe, but they didn't really have a lot of success. There was one pit stop, though, that Reddick was able to get the lead from Briscoe, but then Briscoe got the lead back. And that last run of the race, that Reddick was trying also all those laps to get to the 19 car of Briscoe, to try to get by him for the win, to try to get that first win of the season. He was giving it everything, ripping up against the wall like he normally does as a dirt racer. But the times that he scraped the wall with that Darlington stripe, it kind of killed his momentum for a little bit, backing him up to the guy in third and Eric Jones. But then Reddick gained a few more tenths those last couple laps despite that wall contact, and he tried that last lap to get to Briscoe, going to the inside down in turn number 3, tried to get alongside him, but he was just a little too far back when he was trying to make that dive move into turn 3 in the last lap. But A gutsy, strong performance for Tyler Reddick, being one of the few drivers in the playoffs, one of two, that has not won this season. They got a great points tonight out of the night last night. With all the stage points that they accumulated, plus the runner-up result, they are now 35 points above the cutoff line heading into next weekend's race. If Reddick can just get one win, he can be dangerous in these playoffs. It still baffles me how this guy, who I consider probably right now one of the top 10 drivers in the Cup Series, how does he not have a win? He's too talented to not have a win at this point. And he gave it everything he had last night to try to get to Briscoe and steal the win from the most dominant car. But it wasn't enough. But MJ, Michael Jordan, his owner, was pretty proud of Reddick's performance at the very end of the race. If you watch the post-race show, he had his arms wrapped around him, and you could tell, like he said, "You did your best, my friend. You did a great job for our team. You gave us a chance there at the very end, and there's hope coming that you're going to get that first win of the season, and you're going to help us get further into these playoffs." So a gutsy performance by Tyler Reddick. Despite coming up one spot short, he had a big points night. Number 4, superb performances by a few non-playoff drivers. While the most of the topic of conversation last night was the drivers that are racing for the championship in the playoffs, there are plenty of other stories between the guys that are trying to finish the season strong that didn't make the playoffs. And 3 of those guys in the top 5 at the end of last night's race had some phenomenal runs. Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek for Legacy Moto Club with 3rd and 4th place results, and AJ Allmendinger for Colleague Racing, a top 5 finish in 5th spot. That was absolutely amazing by all 3 of those drivers. Starting with Eric Jones, I mean, it's not really a surprise to see him running well here at Darlington. He's won here twice in the Southern 500, and one of them was a win to make the playoffs in 2019 when he was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, holding up Kyle Busch towards the end of that race. And 3 years ago, in the first playoff race at Darlington, he played spoiler by being a non-playoff driver and delivering a win for what was dubbed at the time Petty GMS Motorsports, which of course now is Legacy Motor Club, with the merger of all the talented professionals behind the scenes as far as the owners go. Eric Jones, that night was able to take the win from a lot of those playoff guys playing the spoiler. And last night, another starring performance by that 43 car with Jones. And at times, it looked like maybe he had something for Chase Briscoe. I mean, matter of fact, the restart, which led eventually to the Ryan Blaney Austin Dillon incident off of turn 4 just a few seconds prior, Jones went 3 wide into turn number 3 on the inside of both Briscoe and Reddick, thinking he could pull off the move, but he was so low to the bottom of the racetrack they had to back off. Or if he'd stayed 3 wide, he may have drifted up the track and taken out both Briscoe and Reddick, and it would have probably left a lot of people unhappy with what Jones could have possibly done. But being the smart guy that he is and knowing how to get around this racetrack, a 3rd place result for Eric Jones on the 43 team. Absolutely phenomenal run. And the same goes for his teammate John Hunter Nemechek. My, what a turnaround year it has been for the whole company at Legacy Motor Club, especially, their owners being Richard Petty and Jimmy Johnson, who spent most of last year in London. He's now kind of fully back to the United States of America helping out this program. And you can have seen in multiple races this year that we have seen them. These 2 cars, the 42 and the 43, are running so much better and performing better than what they had last year. There have been times they would have a lot of top 10 results. I mean, this is John Nemechek's first top 5 finish of the season since the Daytona 500 in February, where he finished in 5th spot. He had a really good run last night. He came from 30th at the start of this race and kept working his way to the front with strategies and extending the stint on the longest green flag run of the race early in the race, which was the first stage, by only doing a one-stop strategy. That one-stop strategy got him some stage points and allowed him to hold his track position for the rest of the night inside the top 10 to 15. Then he got inside the top 5 towards the end of the second stage. And the final stage, he was hanging tough with those Toyotas of Briscoe and Reddick and his teammate in Eric Jones. I got a feeling that Eric Jones, he's taught Nemechek something about how to get around this place, knowing that the success that Jones has had and how well he's adapted to this track. Nemechek last night ran like a pro in the race. Despite some skirmishes on the track early on with Carson Hocevar, Nemechek did a phenomenal job last night, and the performance of the 42 team, as well as Nemechek gaining some confidence with these cars and running competitively. The whole group's got to feel very proud of themselves. They deserve a round of applause for their performances, both the 43 and the 42 last night. And then AJ Allmendinger for Colleague Racing at the top 5. I mean, What more can you say? I mean, that's the second top 5 of the season for AJ Allmendinger, which is pretty ironic considering the road courses. You'd expect him to be in the top 5 or top 10, but a lot of those races he's had mediocre cars or not really the best results due to some circumstances that hurt them in the worst possible way. But last night, Allmendinger, who qualified in the middle of the pack, he was able to work his way up there as well through strategy and long runs. They had a pretty fast black tire Chevrolet last night. I mean, Allmendinger used to not like this place, but he said, after those years that I ran here in Xfinity, I've kind of learned how to adapt to the racetrack and learn how to appreciate it and manage my tires. And he did just that last night. He didn't have anything for those Toyotas. Nobody had anything for the Toyotas that were up front for a lot of the night, mainly Briscoe and at times Reddick and Eric Jones, and even when they were up there earlier, Hamlin and Bubba. But Allmendinger last night being the highest running Chevrolet at the finish, that says something about what Colleague Racing has done to both their cars this year. And there have been times where Ty Dillon has had some good runs this season. And of course, Allmendinger, in this full-time season that he's had, I mean, who knows if he'll be full-time with them next year. We don't have an update yet. But for him to put up that strong performance last night, 5th place, it deserves a round of applause as well, a big pat on the back. That kind of confidence helps a team finish the season strong, and he still has a chance to finish in the top 20 in points. He's only a couple points behind Ty Gibbs at the moment. So great performances last night by Jones, Nemechek, and Allmendinger. And number 5, the racing in general last night. Well, I mean, Chase Briscoe had the field covered being out front all night long, even though there was the last run of the race where Reddick and Jones tried everything they could to chase down Chase Briscoe. Briscoe was the control car last night. Throughout the rest of the pack, though, there were comers and goers for a lot of the race, mainly due to some of the incidents that happened to some of these guys, mainly the playoff guys on pit road having these penalties or incidents that are going on that are preventing them from getting good pit stops, loose wheels, dropping the jack too early, misfortunes on the racetrack. There were so many comers and goers throughout the night. Some playoff guys that started deep in the pack, some were able to work their way up there, but then some of them fell out of it. But there were really only 4 playoff drivers in the top 10 at the end of the night, and they were all from the Toyota camp. Briscoe, Reddick, Bubba, and Hamlin. Everybody else that was in the playoffs all finished outside the top 10 last night, which shows you how treacherous and how tricky this track can be. But all the changing that we had last night and the restarts, they were a lot of fun seeing these guys with the differing grooves, whether they were up against the wall in the middle groove or even low on the apron of the racetrack. They put on some really good performances last night on these restarts and made it relatively entertaining for the most part. And of course, we talked about tire management. We had a lot of that last night. Didn't see a lot of tire failures, thankfully, considering that Saturday's truck race was pretty ugly on some of those tires for some of those guys. But thankfully, you didn't have any of those last night. It's just a matter of, can you manage your tires for the long run or the short run versus how you save them for the end of a run before making a pit stop. But Darlington, once again, always a fun time, under the lights, being in the playoffs yet again. It was a good race in general, and I hope the fans last night got quite a show out of it. I know I did, because me being there in attendance for the first time, I thoroughly enjoyed it from start all the way to finish. Now we are off to Madison, Illinois, to Worldwide Technology Raceway, or Gateway, as many people still like to call it, for the second race of the round of 16. A flat track with some banking in turns 1 and 2, not so much in turns 3 and 4. It's going to be a very interesting race for this track being now run in September versus what we've had in the last couple of years since we come to this track in the early summer in June. So these guys that had some rough performances last night in the Southern 500, they got to turn it around this weekend. You cannot have any mistakes, and you better hope, because of how long these straightaways are before you get in those corners, you better hope that your brake rotors are able to handle the pressure before they get all the way down into the corners and you're braking at that high speed. So what will happen next weekend? Will Austin Cindric defend his win from last year when considering it was a fuel mileage race? Could fuel mileage be a big factor for next weekend's race? Or will a non-playoff driver perhaps step in at the door and say, I'm going to spoil your guys' day? We're going to find out. That is the fun that is the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I hope everybody had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. And on this Labor Day today, we celebrate all the hardworking men and women in the United States of America that put their efforts in by doing their jobs and providing a living for their families and for themselves. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats to Chase Briscoe and the 19 team winning the Cookout Southern 500. Have a great night, everybody. Let's go racing!